Welcome to the Going Green podcast. Today we're going to look at the topic of heat waves. We're starting to experience one here in the UK, and we've got one of these very rare amber warnings for heat coming up for this weekend. And they're talking about sort of records being broken again. I think our record's about 38.6, if I remember rightly.
Something in that area. It's not.
And whether something like that's going to actually slip this sort of weekend or early into next week. But it's not just us that's having the problems this week, is it?
No, it isn't. Well, I say not us this week. The answer is technically it's us this week, but I mean Spain, Portugal, France, probably I won't say most of Europe, but definitely Western Europe's having the, because that's where the plume, as they call it, is happening. That really hurt me stubbing my finger into the microphone.
Yeah, Italy as well.
Italy as well. They're having.
I was looking at the River Po, and that sort of dried up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite worrying to think that we're going through this, this heat wave. And you were telling me earlier, before we came online, about how many records have been broken this June.
Yeah, it's one of the things where we're working with, because with the records have yet been set for, but the overall record for June, the answer it was, here we go. It was Italy, Norway, Finland, Iran, and what's the other? I'm reading. I've lost the country.
I lost the country.
I've lost the country. Anyway, but loads of them.
Japan.
That was it. Loads of them were reporting that they've just broken their, I'd say their summer temperatures. The June hottest temperature for quite a, and we're saying, oh, Norway, not that warm. How hot was it in Norway? It was nearly 30. Which is, unfortunately, not very good for Norway in relation to it.
I always think of Norway as fjords and snow, and I think of Norway in the summer as snow. It's not quite, but if you go North Norway, it's going to be snow, and it's not. We're not thinking about that. It's sort of thinking of sort of people sort of going round in sort of, well, just outside in T-shirts, just driving around, collecting my wife from the station. You see all the people out and about, and they're, well, for the UK, we seem to have lost those hats and scarves, and it's sort of just down to T-shirts and things. Everyone's out in T-shirts and sort of enjoying themselves in the sun. We had an event this weekend where we had the Commonwealth Games sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Torch.
Yeah, the I was gonna say the bandon, but it's not the bandon, it's the baton.
The baton, that was the word I was looking for. The baton came through, and they had the relay race, and everyone was out there on the Friday enjoying themselves in the lovely sunshine. And we've had quite a lot of lovely sunshine. Yesterday wasn't good. It was just as hot. It made 30 here, which is unusual for Hemel Hempstead in England to get that sort of temperature. But we didn't really see much in the way of sunshine. It was totally overcast. And we even had some rain, and you expected the rain to come, and it was going to cool the place down, and it didn't.
No,
it was just as humid and horrible.
Yeah, it's just, and the major reason for this is what they're calling as a hot plume, essentially, and basically the so-called heat dome. Yeah, and you can look it up what really heat dome, but essentially it's just high pressure, but it's basically blocking in the way, and that's how everything it can build up, and this is where how he can generate, because there's not enough won't say cloud cover, that's the wrong way, but it's blocking clouds formation and moving them around. And so you've got basically this hole, or this wandering sort of circular mass that's moving, that's keeping all the.
All right. So, Paul, let's ask you a simple question, which I know the answer to. So, if you don't know, I'll tell everyone. Why does why does high pressure cause hot air? Why are high pressures sort of warm?
Well, I think it's the difference between the how much water's in the air.
Nope.
All right.
No. High pressure, we've got basically more air, haven't we? So you've got more air, higher pressure in a smaller area. And we all know if you take something like a bicycle pump and you squash the air, then that air heats up. And so very simply with high pressure, we've got more air in the sort of area than compared with the low pressure, and that squashed the air and it heats it up. Not much, but it adds a few degrees on. And the longer the high pressure continues, generally, the hotter it sort of gets because you've got continual high pressure keeping sort of the air over here sort of warm.
Yeah, I was going to say the heat, keeping the temperature warm by.
Yeah. Well, heat sort of builds up. It's like our house. It's sort of, if you have one day of heat, well, yeah, it sort of comes and goes, and the house doesn't warm up. But if the house, then the bricks get warm the next day, well, they didn't cool down enough last time, and then they gradually sort of retain the heat. And UK houses are designed to hold in the heat, aren't they? Rather than sort of
Let it all go.
let it all go, which is what happens in sort of more European style houses. They're designed sort of for better insulation, perhaps in winter, and better sort of, I suppose, insulation in summer to sort of keep the houses warmer in winter and cooler in summer. Whereas here we're pretty good at trying to keep the houses warmer in winter, although I do feel that we could do with a bit better insulation and organisation on that, but that is as it is. But our houses in the summer aren't built for this. We don't go for the nice light roofs. We go for the dark roofs to try and absorb as much heat. And if you want to go to a sauna, you don't have to go very far. Just pop up into your loft, and that will do it for you. It's going to have quite high temperatures up there if you live in the UK, because simply the roof's going to absorb all that heat from the sun.
Yes, absolutely. And you can see. Oh, I've died. I'm back. I'm alive still.
Your microphone went then, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Anyway, but I've lost track of sort of
What you were going to say?
what I was going to say. Panic about things. With this heat wave, of course, we've got the amber warning, this very rare amber warning, and that is and they said sort of loads of things such as the ambulance service is on standby for all the heat wave problems, and and conditions. They said not heart and lung problems are more severe in this time. All these sorts of problems, which is fine. Things can deal with it, but at the same time, I was reading that sort of, it's a rare occasion for us, but a place like India, or more assisting New Delhi, right? They go through very periods of sort of wet and then dry, and that's they should be well versed into this sort of period of heat and dryness. And the answer is they're saying even there, like say ambulance service, emergency services have received unprecedented amounts of call outs for people just collapsing in the street due to heat stroke and those sorts of things.
Well, old people suffer a lot more from heat than the younger people. That they're sort of, as you get older, your temperature regulation doesn't work quite as well, and so someone like my mum, who's in her 90s, And she said, well, I really don't like the heat. She can cope with going up to about 25, and she sort of complains a little bit about that. But 30 is a little bit too much for her. And she just sort of says, well, I can't be bothered to do anything. It's just too hot. I'm not going to do anything. She starts to shut down and not do as much as she probably needs to. So, what do you need to do then, Paul, to try and survive the hot weather? So, you're a typical person, and what can you do to try to sort of alleviate the problems?
Right. Well, immediately is to drink more. This is to hydrate, keep you hydrated, because your body's main process of getting rid of heat is sweating, and that uses a lot of water. Therefore, you need to increase your water intake.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so bung it up by another litre or so.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one good thing. Now, there is one little problem, of course. You're an Englishman. So what does that mean?
A lot of things.
No, no, I was thinking of mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the noonday sun, as they say. And that's probably a good thing not to do now. And we don't try to go out from sort of, I don't know, noon till about 2, 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I think they said it was something from the period of peak solar, which is basically peak sunlight is between about 11 till 3 or something like that. And so that's the basic period of time where basically you need to find not seek shelter but seek shade. And there was new maps. The Mayor of London released a new map of London, which is actually sort of shade areas. Yeah, basically places that have shade that people can go to
Well,
and flock to. And so the nice sunny areas where they've got, it was quite interesting. They did a heat map, which is quite hilarious and odd.
you mean a real heat map?
But I mean, a not real heat map in relation to this is where there's zero shade and this is where there is lots of shade. And so those are places you want to go to as opposed to the really, and it was sort of these odd sort of inverse heat map. It was clever. I'm not saying right, just idea, but it was this idea that seeking shade and shelter from the sun over that, I say the noonday period, is actually one of the things where they're asking people to do so to help, keep people, out of the sunlight because it is intense. And the major thing, of course, is how much UV light is that currently out there at the moment. I mean that's the sunshine. It's usually quite when there's little cloud cover because of probably we've got this high pressure over. Then there's no high level cloud, and that doesn't and that reduces the amount of blockage of the UV rays coming down, and so the UV down at ground level is significantly increased, which is bad because obviously we know that UV rays damages our skin. You might say, yes, I've got a tan, but it's sort of
Well, that's burnt, isn't it,
it's
really?
burnt, really. Yes.
So, if you're interested, look on my YouTube channel. We're doing a video a bit later today on UV. I've got some special chemicals, some photochromic reactive chemical, and this reacts only to UV light. So if you take ordinary light and you put it on this chemical, it sits there saying, yeah, fine, okay. But we tried it out yesterday in the cloud, and we took it outside. It was a cloudy day, and we were surprised the amount of UV that this chemical detected. And we'll do a video on that one later today, assuming we get some nice weather, but that'll be up in the next few days. So we've got that idea of UV, and that causes problems, skin problems. What else can we do? I was thinking actually before I go back to ask that one. You were talking about being hot in the noonday, seek shade. I remember you and I went to a directing course, didn't we, in London a few years ago? And it was sort of in a hotel, and it was sort of hot and sunny, and we made our way to a little park where there was water and there was some trees, and we sat near there, and it was noticeably cooler and fresher there than it was sort of in the rest of London, where we actually had to walk when we walked back.
Yes.
Years ago, though, we went to the south of France, and we chose the hottest period of time to go there. We went to the south of France. We went down when they were building the Millau Bridge, and that was extremely interesting. That when we went down there, we had to go down a valley, and it was hot. It was about nearly the 40s, wasn't it?
Yes.
But in this valley, because we had sort of, well, rocks either side of us, and it was sort of quite a steep slope going down. The lorries were struggling to get down because the road literally was melting, and the lorries had, their brakes on, and they were stopped, and they were still sliding down the road as the tarmac was actually melting. And I know how hot it was there because my car, with its air conditioning on, also had a little temperature sensor to say outside. And I discovered my temperature sensor only went up to 50 Celsius. And we know it got over 50 Celsius because it wouldn't work after that. It climbed right up to 50 and then wouldn't work after that. And it just said it was sort of temperature exceeded. And we know it was pretty hot because if you touched the glass on the car, you were burning yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And it was quite a phenomenal heat wave.
The Burges were catching fire, weren't they? We had, we went through several fires where the fire brigade were either side of the dual carriageway motorway putting fires out, and we were just told to sort of drive through there. And you wanted to go at a fair bit of speed because there was also the heat of the fire as well as everything else. And we noticed how many people listening to French radio were actually dying, because of the heat wave.
Yes, and this is the point about sort of being wary of the heat. You mightn't go out and enjoy it, but you do need to take precautions for it. I know one of the major things you might say and find, is to do the seek shelter things, but it's also to take responsibility in regards to finding the cool shaded places, but don't if you have to be outside, make sure it's not in the noonday sun, so forth. Try to seek shelter, drink lots of water, and there is this lovely thing, of not air conditioning. You do want air movement. That's the critical thing.
And how can you get better air movement in a house? Let's suppose, I'm working from home and I want to sort of get a good airflow over me. What would I do?
Well, you really want to sort of, create a path for the air. So basically you want a place where the air comes in and a place where the air goes out. And basically you want to put yourself in between those 2 points. And so commonly what you can do is you can open the front door and open the back door. That will create a blast through the house.
Better open windows.
But the windows do exactly the same, just, a bit more secure and safe. So that's the other thing.
So what I want to do then is I want to open a window at the back of the house and the front of the house. But there's a real technique to doing this if you want to try and do this. If you've got air coming in and out of the house, it always helps if you're going to do this in the favour of any wind. But let's assume it's a day like today. There's hardly a breeze blowing, and I want to try and do this. So the best thing to do is to open up on one side of the house all the windows at the top of the house. But at the other side of the house, open the windows at the bottom of the house. So, for instance, I've got the windows in the front of the house open at the top, but at the windows at the bottom of the house open at the bottom. Well, but before you think that's actually daft, I haven't got top and bottom windows. I've opened the windows upstairs in the front of the house, and I've opened the windows downstairs in the back of the house.
Yes, yes.
And that is providing an airflow because warm air rises. So as the warm air rises and it's going out through the bedrooms, it's then sucking cooler air, well, slightly, in through the bottom of the house where we are at the moment. That's not that good when it gets to the evening, I will be honest. We have to then think about changing that around because otherwise my bedroom gets to temperatures like it was last night of 30.8 Celsius. And that, by the way, wasn't when I went to bed. That was at 5 a.m. when I woke up.
Yes, it's one of those odd things where, yeah, but there's other, you think sort of, they talk about all these things. You hear in sort of one of the major things they say is don't open your curtains on nice, hot, warm, sunny days like today. And that seems about counterintuitive, really, because surely, first you want the light, but actually curtains do mostly, your windows, if you've got double glazing, do a remarkable job of basically heating up. The sunlight hits the window and basically it radiates then the heat out. And what curtains can do is basically they can block that heat and so trap that heat in basically your windowsill, as opposed to putting it all into the room. So one of the common things people say is that, you used to draw a curtain. And we know this because on the continent, loads of people, they have shutters on their windows. You see, and they just put the...
Yeah, we don't have shutters in the UK. So maybe that's something else that if things carry on like this, we need to do that. Except on the continent, of course, their windows open inwards so they can sort of put the shutters outside.
Yes, there's a whole sort of, if we're going to do this, you need to do it properly, and windows would have to all be changed. I'm not saying, but it is that point of not letting the sunlight in the house, and therefore you're not then letting your windows actually doing the heating for you, and then the shutters allow the air throw out or through, meaning that's the way of cooling. It is quite a clever bit of design work, but at the same time, you've got to remember that on the continent, generally things are warmer than here in the UK. As I said, they've got better cooling and heating than we have because they have to deal with a more wider range of temperatures,
which we're now starting to suffer from.
Which we're suffering from. So that's why UK houses aren't built to they're built to keep the heat in, but not let the heat out, and that's a problem in that we need to start changing houses. But you've got to adapt a old house, and it's hard to do so because it's not designed to do it in the first place. As opposed to,
well, it's thinking about can I put shutters on my house if this carries on every year, and all the evidence is that it's going to. Then the next time I have double glazing, I'm going to have to think about windows that open inwards. Difficult to buy them in this country. And is it worth putting shutters on the outside of my windows? And I can see that, it probably does make good sense to do that. So we will just have to see how that sort of stuff changes. What else have we got then? So we've thought of water, keep well hydrated, don't do the mad dogs in Englishmen and go out in the sort of midday sun. You can, if you're working from home, let the air in by opening windows on one side of the house at the top and the windows at the bottom of the other side of the house. That helps. What other things can we actually do to help us weather this heat wave?
Well, beyond that, directly isn't very much. The one of the major things you actually talk about, which is why they talk about shaded areas, is actually plants in that regards to what happens with, let's say, a plant gets too hot. What does it? It has to cool itself down, right? It does that by basically creating a water mist underneath it. That's how the leaves are perspiring. That's how it works.
Transpiring.
Sorry, not aspiring. And so basically, under the trees, under the plants, there's a bit more water and a bit more moisture, but it helps. I wouldn't say evaporate, but one of the critical things is why we sweat is, of course, that the evaporating sweat or water off our bodies takes away a lot of that heat. Yeah, so that's why we do it. Yeah, plants do a very similar but very different thing. And so, could we not learn by this and basically spraying ourselves down, not with drinking water but it's just spraying our down with more water, so that basically when we do go out in the hot day sun, there's more water to evaporate off our skin, and therefore that keeps us warm.
Cooler.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you don't really think about it, but you a little bit of thought and you might say that's a good idea.
Well, one of the other ones that I would come up with, and I need, is if you're watching this podcast rather than listening to it, if you listen to it, you can't see that I may be going slightly bald. It appears that on the top of my head, there is sort of, the hair seems to be more finely spaced. And it means if I go out in the sunshine, my head burns. Doesn't for Paul, because he's got a nice thick mat of sort of hair there. But wear a hat, and a wide-brimmed hat at that. That makes a difference. The sunglasses make a difference. They don't keep you cool.
Well, no, they don't keep you cool.
You might look cool.
I was going to say you might look cool, but in theory, sunglasses don't really do anything. It's one of those odd things where, what do sunglasses do? They protect your eyes against the light and the UV, as opposed to anything.
But you're designed to sort of cope with that and the amount of light anyway. So you actually don't need sunglasses. But sunscreen is one of those things that you can do. If you're going to go out in the sunshine at all, then let's put some moderate sun cream on. And I would start with probably factor 50.
Oh, well, the answer is probably not 50 here.
Yeah, no, I would. I would seriously start with factor 50. And you have to remember with this stuff that you need to put it on not just once during the day, but you need to apply it several times during the day. People talk about, well, if you go into the water, then you need to reapply it. Yes, but you actually need to put it on several times a day. And a lot of this stuff helps with moisturizing your skin and keeping it really in good nick. Trying to do this sort of sunscreen, it does work, but also just keeping your skin and looking after it. You were out in Australia, I know, for a year or so, Paul, and you were, quite surprised with the number of people going around in all their sort of, bikinis on the beach, weren't you? You saw loads of bikinis on the beach, didn't you?
Well, the answer is no. Not quite.
You were disappointed, weren't you?
Well, but the reason they did it is because of how the intensity of the sun. You don't want, I say, not skin contact, but you don't want your skin out in that bright sunshine, so that you want to basically cover up.
Long sleeve t-shirts.
But you wanted sort of, something that allowed the water to go out. It's one of those things where.
So loose clothing
and just
long sleeves,
and hats. It was all the shade. You think in all the sunny, hot countries, they wear sort of large brimmed, as you mentioned. The sombreros, and you think there's a reason they wore those is because they, it's always hot, it's always things, and it's trying to keep themselves shaded and cool.
So you're suggesting now the UK new fashion for the summer is going to be the sombrero.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think with that sobering thought of everyone going around in sombreros, we better say goodbye from this episode of Going Green. We'll see you again next week when we'll have another look at another topic on Going Green. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Take care. Bye bye.
Ciao.